Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Are you kidding? We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna play together today.
Yes, we are. So, you and I go back a couple of years. We first met when your first book came out, and remind me again what year that was in.
Oh gosh, that was in 2021.
When it was 2021. I think I had just started my podcast, and we had done an Instagram live. We had met, and just talking about your book, because a lot of it is revolved around mental health, and that was it's still and is very relevant to everything today, especially with everything going on in our world right now. So, we were just talking off the air about how the opposite of play in adults is mental health and signs of, let's say, depression. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like when you lose that touch of play as an adult, and that's something I deal with every day in the therapy room with parents is their reluctancy to play and their inhibitions around play, and how play isn't even maybe socially appropriate for adults. And a lot of pushback on that. And we were just talking about how that's like, we both believe that's the exact opposite. And I think we have so much in common when it comes to play. And that's why I think I first fell in love with Melissa and Doug Toys, which I'm sure the whole world did, and is still in love with Melissa and Doug Toys. And so that's why it's just such an honor to have you on today, to talk about now your new book, The Heart of Entrepreneurship, Crafting Your Authentic Recipe for Success. And can we just talk about how beautiful your cover is too? It's so inviting and playful. I love it. Um, tell us a little bit about, what inspired you to write this. I mean, I feel like I already know the answer, but I'd love to hear it in your words.
Oh, well, I think, like any product, I think these seeds of and these ingredients of the recipe exist within us. And when they're ready to coalesce into this beautiful recipe and come out, they do. And I've been crafting that recipe for success my entire career. And I think it started with, the hard, uh, all the hardness of building a company for 35 years and starting our second company. And then about 15 years in, starting to mentor young entrepreneurs, which has been one of the greatest joys of my life. I feel like a midwife in ushering these beautiful children of other people into the world when their ideas go out into the world. So I think all those things culminated in writing this book.
Yeah, exactly. And can we talk for a moment about how you were a mom of six children? I'm right on that, right? Six children. That
Well,
that
that
is
doesn't even count Doug. And Doug is like six children in and of himself. So the kids are easy compared to him.
and to be married to someone and to parent six children, and also create and develop this company that you've created together. That's a lot on just any relationship, on a marriage. I mean, just parenting alone, even just one child, I mean, that's just a lot. It's very taxing, I think, to a lot of parents, when they're going through, that those parenting years. But then also to have that same person be your business partner is a lot. How did you manage that? I mean, that's just spending a lot of time on a personal and professional level that I think is very unique and hard to do, but maybe it was easier for you all. I don't know.
Oh, no, it was not.
Okay. Okay.
And I think of all the questions I've ever asked, the number one and two are what you asked. Number one is, how did you ever work with your spouse for all
Yep.
those years? And number two is, how can you and how did you try to have it all, so to speak?
Right.
So,
And how you balance it all, because I'm sure that's really hard too. Like I said, especially not just one, but six children. I mean, that is a lot.
yeah.
So
Well, I think it starts with, I'm going to sound cliched, but intention and then focus and attention. And my intention from the very beginning was to have both. Like I knew from the time I was little that I needed something of myself, my own, something for myself that would give my own life meaning. And I knew that if I made my children my meaning, there would be a big problem to them mostly. And I didn't want to do that to them. So I was very intentional knowing I had to figure out a way to have both a career and be a mom. And then I think the attention was, how are we going to do this so that we are able to give our all to both? And, the first thing I guess I'll say is, you will never not feel a level of guilt toward everything you're doing. I mean, I've never known any woman who's had a career and a family who hasn't felt that she's not giving her work all she could give, or she's not giving her family all she could give. It's just part of the role. So I always still feel guilty about both, but despite that, I still did both. And I made it my point, a couple things. One is, as soon as we could afford it, which we couldn't for a really long time, we had terrible childcare. And I literally feared for my kids' safety when we weren't near them. Those were the worst days because I couldn't work without feeling like my heart was up here and fearful. But the minute we could afford childcare, which I realized is there is quality childcare you can get if you pay for it. I never thought that. Once I realized that, we got the best. And then our lives started to change dramatically, because then I could breathe and I knew that my children were being loved and cared for probably better than I would have, which made me able to work. So that was really important. And then two, because I realized at some point, although I felt so much guilt early on, I realized that if I communicate that working as a woman is guilt inducing and you should feel really bad about that and communicate that to your children, I knew I wasn't being a very good role model to them, because then I was communicating to them that if they had anything they loved as much as their kids in their lives, that they should feel bad about it. Right. So I started to change that story. And I started to say, okay, Melissa, whether you believe it or not, you are a role model. And if you want your children, especially your daughters, I have 4 daughters and 2 sons, to find something that they value as much or more than their partner and family, then you better model that to them. So I started to much more unapologetically talk about how much I loved my job and what it did for people and what it did for the world and what it did for me. And whenever they said the things that made me feel terrible, like, why aren't you the art smart mom? Or why aren't you, with waiting for the bus when I come home? I would say, oh my gosh, sweetie, I want to do that more than anything. But you see, I have this thing that I actually started before you were all born. That is one of my children. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And guess what? My goal for you is that you find that thing as well. So every time you wish I was there, think about what I'm doing and know that I will be home. We will spend the whole night together. But know that there is something else that's also very important to me. It doesn't mean I love you any less, but it means that I have a few things in my life.
That is such a great perspective. And I haven't heard it said like that before, where, you validate their emotion, you validate your love for them. And you also say, I hope you can find something like this one day when you grow older. I think it is so intentional, and it's so beautiful, that you're able to be that role model, not only as a mom and as a parent, but then also as a businesswoman, like that you were able to do that. I think that's,
It's
such a great lesson.
Really game changing. And I have to say, the jury's not out anymore, because my youngest child is 18 and all my kids they talk about, and they have things they're really passionate about. And they talk about having a family and who they're going to get for childcare and what they're going to do. And it has proven to be, not that they wouldn't say I could have been there more probably, but they all talk very excitedly about the passions in their lives. So I do see that in the end, it did do what I wanted it to do.
Right. And you also have that a secure attachment, which I think a lot of times us working moms that, do have, big careers, I think that's the thing too, is we feel like we've lost touch with them as a mother, or you're right.
Well, that's also very intentional. So the other thing that I did, because I think you could very well just put them so far below your other work priorities that you really don't spend time with them. But I'm so, my words are narrow in focus, to narrow what you're focused on and then focus on it rapidly. So, my nights, the minute I got home, it was entirely on them, even to the detriment of Doug. Like I made those nights about literally whatever they wanted to do, open-ended play, games and running around and baking and you name it. It was all about them, putting them to bed, books every night. So it was like, and one of my other nevers was never agree to anything at night. So I had to do some travel, but other than that, for work, I didn't do meetings. I didn't do any social things. It was literally only about them.
Yeah, that's something you and I have in common. I tried to put everything during the time when they're in school. They're both in school full time now. So that's when I, record all of my podcasts or when I wrote my book or, and yes, some things would topple over sometimes, or even sometimes on a weekend or if I was speaking at a conference or something, but I'm the same way with that. And, it's having that special time with them at night is what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember sometimes the long hours or, maybe once in a while they may mention the bus stop, where you may not have been there every single time, but they're going to remember those special moments at night. That's what they're going to take away from their childhood. And I remember talking to someone years ago about this, and it's the same type of mentality of, when you're at work, you can give 100% of your time to work. And then when you're at home, you give 100% of the time to your children or your family. And, I think the multitasking is where I think a lot of, parents, have this myth that, well, I have to just kind of do it all and fit it in whenever I can. And it almost makes us anxious about it. But if you're able to just put one thing aside and then fully dedicate yourself to whatever you're working on or who you're with in that moment, that's where you're going to get the most, I think, life satisfaction, whether it's as a mom or as a businesswoman or whatever, you're engaging in at that time. So I think that's very important to remember.
Yeah, it's definitely the quality over quantity. I feel
Yes.
like 10 minutes of super focused, uninterrupted time is better than hours of distracted, fragmented attention.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and
So,
the saying, attention is the greatest form of love, or, it's said
oh
many
yeah,
ways. I really believe that. So I think if you're there and focused on them and you show them that you care, it comes through, even if it's for a fragmented amount of time.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So this question comes from someone. I vetted some questions, just from some of my followers before we were talking today. And so now that we're a little bit on that topic about the free time that you had with your children in the evenings, was your home just inundated with Melissa and Doug toys when your kids were growing up? That was the question. Or
Amazing.
how many Melissa and Doug toys did your kids play with growing up?
Well, the truth is, my kids were the testers for every toy. So we actually had a ton, not of the brand new ones, but there wasn't a sample in the final, production sample stage that they didn't test. And they became very ruthless, too mean, because I told them early on, like, I don't want you to say nice things just because, I'm involved with them. I want you to be honest. And they were brutal. So I think we were always either playing with a toy that was in a sample stage, or I purchased every toy ever created because I wanted to see how they worked and how they were made and, how they functioned. So we were either playing with a Melissa and Doug toy sample, or we were playing with someone else's toy that I was testing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it'd be safe to say that you had a very play-based approach to
Yeah.
parenting, that you had a very play-based home. How did you
Actually,
value
well,
play so much? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll even share that, when we were fortunate enough, because we were very poor for a long time, but to build a home that was sort of our place for family and friends, we actually built kind of an homage to Melissa and Doug. We built this incredible playroom that literally had, we actually built in a kitchen and grocery store that had, it was pretend, but it used like real counters, real hardware. And basically, we stocked it with all Melissa and Doug toys. So we had a grocery store with a cash register and a conveyor belt, like a real grocery store with cabinets and freezer shelves. We had a full kitchen, which had all our pretend play. Then we had a whole dress up area with every one of our, role play outfits and a million others to supplement. Then we had an entire arts and crafts area that had everything you could imagine for that. Then we had a train and tool area.
Oh, I love it.
And then we had a music area. So it was really basically 5 or 6 different areas that were part of this very large, it looked like a children's museum.
Oh,
And we used it for, lots of testing. We used it for play dates. We used it for family events. I mean, the kids, every night we were down there while they were putting on shows, and we were going through the market with them, and they were making us food. It was some of the most joyous times of my life.
yeah. And, you know, I was just talking yesterday about, how we live in this technology driven world and how, these days I didn't grow up with it. Maybe some of your kids did or didn't, or kind of exposed to it at an early age. But, you know, I think there's so much noise about, play over screen time. And, if my children have a choice to play, they're going to choose play or arts and crafts or music. But if there's no value to play in the home, and they don't have access to some of those things, and some of those things doesn't mean you have to even cost money. Like, you can make musical instruments out of a spatula and a pan from your cabinet, or give a kid a thing of tape and they could go crazy with it, right? So it doesn't need, extravagant toys and expensive things to make a playroom joyful. But it goes with the mentality of it. If they have the option to and have that opportunity to play, they're going to choose that. I would say the majority of the time over a screen. I think they only resort to the screen so much is because there's nothing else really
Boredom with
engaging them. Right.
nowhere to go.
Right. So how would you suggest to a parent of how to prioritize play in the home, and, maybe value play a little bit more because of all the benefits and all the importance of play? But there's a lot of parents that, I kind of butt heads against, or they're like, they don't get it or they don't want to, and it's hard to convince them. Would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, wow. I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Oh, good.
Well, I think it's tricky. So, first off, it's about boundaries. And I guess if you've set the boundaries and you haven't allowed technology for your child, then it's going to be about tolerating their boredom. And tolerating boredom is very painful for a parent because your kid is going to be pulling on you and saying, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. And you are going to have a lot of courage to say, um, figure something out. And we wrote a whole guide about this. And we talked about sort of a parent being a little bit of a play coach, and creating these boxes of categorized things that you could give a child whenever they say I'm bored. And one of them could be drawing. One of them could be role play. You could make up whatever ones you want them to be. One of them could be arts and crafts. And you could have 5 or 6 of those. And when your child says sort of I'm bored, if you don't want to be one-on-one engaging with them, you hand them one of these and say, come up with something good and let me know when you've come up with it. So I think the first thing would be having boundaries and not allowing the technology, and then slowly but surely giving your child a little bit of opportunity to make something from the boredom, because that skill to be able to make something from nothing is perhaps the most critical skill they will need in life. That is resilience in a nutshell. And it's also ideation and problem solving and critical thinking. And it's really, and to not give them that gift of time to be able to come up with something for their blank canvas is really doing them the ultimate disservice. So, however, if the cat's already out of the bag and you already have all these devices in your home and they're just automatically going on those, then what will happen, and what happened to me, it was actually kind of a double-edged sword. The only way at some point when it became too late that I could get my kids off technology was to literally become their cruise director. And what started to happen is they weren't on their technology at all, but I was the most exhausted parent ever because every night I would literally have to schedule out like what we were going to do. And it was like, we're going to do this. And then they'd be like, okay, what's next? And every day had to be different. And it was like sort of fun, but not really. It started to become an incredible burden and a lot of pressure because the minute I stopped doing stuff with them, they would slowly migrate right back to the technology. And I realized that in a sense, I had created an even worse problem, right? Because I had made it so they were dependent on me and used me, for that fun and really couldn't do it on their own. And I was exhausted. So I think, in that way, you would have to have a bridge to it and probably create some rules and boundaries and say you can use it, but between this time and what is it you want to try to do and start to explore with your kids because, if they haven't had a childhood rife with the freedom to explore things they might want to do, they're not going to know. And it's going to be really terrifying to not know what to make, again, of that free time. So it might be, let's go to the bookstore and get a book. And I want you to finish this whole book and see if you like reading. So you might have to try 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 different things for them to get a bunch of hobbies that they feel comfortable doing when they're not, on technology.
Exactly.
But it takes time. It's a trial and error exercise.
It really is. And I think it does come with a lot of front loading. And I think that front loading is what exhausted parents push up against because they're thinking, I'm already exhausted. I'm already completely, overwhelmed and overstimulated from my own day. The last thing I feel like doing or want to do is, like you said, create all of these, habits around the house. And sometimes it is easier to just take 5, 10,
Oh,
20
it's
minutes,
definitely easier.
right? I've been there too. I get it, my kids got a Nintendo Switch 2 recently, and the game Mario Kart. We all grew up with it and love it. And so lately, not every night, but every once in a while, if there's a little downtime and they're done with their homework and they've done all the things they need to do for the day, and we've had time outside and some playtime and whatnot, I'll say, "Hey, how about some Mario Kart?" But they want me to play with them,
Yes.
which is really cool. So it is technology. It is a video game. It is, but we play against each other and I'm actively engaged in this video play with
Yeah.
them, and it's much different than me just saying, okay, here's this, be on the screen
Yes.
for 3 hours. It's so like you said, it's about the intention behind it. And if you are going to do it, play with your kids, all I have to do is sit there on the chair and move my fingers. That gets the most exercise, So even on those tired days when I don't feel like actively engaging and, sitting on the floor or in active dialogue, I can do something like that where you're still playing and engaging with them and, creating that attachment, but, you're not exerting a ton of energy either. So
Yes.
you can
And
incorporate both if you need to.
you can. And I have a few, 2 of my kids were born in the thick of it. They're the guinea pig generation, right when technology and everyone in my town, we gave kids their phones in 6th grade. It was like their reward for going to middle school. And I was right there with them because I didn't want them to be left out of the social, so even they, who are definitely tethered to their phones, we have some go-tos. We've created a bunch of family games that they love and we play them all the time. So, there are still, you can have tech-free dinners where we'd have a little basket and they'd keep migrating back. Suddenly you'd see the phone at the table and you'd have to be like, put it in the,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
and you could tell even they will say, I feel better when I'm not on it. I don't want to be on it. I don't like how it makes me feel. I have nothing, it's just where I end up.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
I think it is going to require more diligence on the part of the parent, which is harder. But I think that's the cost of being a parent if you want your kids to gain some of those other play-based skills too.
Exactly. Let's go back to your book for a minute because something I'm fascinated with is that you started Melissa and Doug when you were 22 years old. And we were talking off camera for a moment before we started about, I think I was still in college. I didn't know what I was doing. I think I was working at the mall and, some retail store and thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And, yes, you go into more detail in your book about, how it came about. But the question I have is, how did you know? I think you knew at a young age, you talk about in your introduction how when you were 7, you were asking your teacher a lot of questions and, wondering the why of about life and just all sorts of things that led up to that, of course. But starting a company at 22 is just mind-blowing to me, just huge, because I feel like that's so young. And one of the questions I also got that incorporates with this, and you can kind of tie them together, is, I think when a lot of people see someone create something as big as Melissa and Doug and have so much success with it, they think, well, that's impossible for me. Like that makes it look so easy. But did they fail ahead of time? How many times did they fail before they succeeded? And there's just, I think a lot of people are scared to take that step forward, right? Because they think, well, I might fail, or the chances are slim to none of making this successful company like Melissa and Doug. So, what would you say to that person who might have an entrepreneurial itch, but doesn't want to scratch it because they're just too scared of the fear of failure and especially at that young age, maybe at 22 and more people would go for it because, they're young and they have that heat, a lot of energy and passion, maybe than someone who's older and, is kind of set in a career already. But what would you say to that person, or just how did you start with all of that and how did that come about?
Wow.
I know it's a loaded question.
Of the largest questions. We could have an entire podcast episode about each one of those, much less them both together.
I know.
I will start by saying that none of this is easy. And one of my messages, both with parents, to say that parenting and mixing parenting and a career is really hard. And I say it all the time, life is hard. And if you believe that, instead of that life is supposed to be butterflies and rainbows and picket fences, actually things get a lot easier, because if you believe it's actually supposed to be hard, and when it's not hard, that's like a really great day, everything kind of changes. It's a really nice reframe. So building a business, don't let anyone ever tell you it's going to be easy. It's going to be the hardest thing you're ever going to do. And I would say, one, I could have never done it without Doug. I was terrified of leaving the corporate track, which I despised with every ounce of my being. I was only on it for like a year and a half. And it was the worst year and a half of my life because I was absolutely a square peg in a round hole who felt no meaning, who felt passionless in what I was doing, and felt that I had no skill in what I was doing, and literally found it hard to get out of bed each day. So I think I had reached a point where I wouldn't have left, because I was a martyr and I would have just sacrificed my soul to sort of achieve the elusive definition of success. But thank goodness I had Doug, who said, we can do something else. There is another path. And I was like, no, there's not. I'm stuck here. And he said, no, there is another path. So without him, and without a partner in general, for many of us, the road, or at least a very supportive scaffolding around you, which are, mentors, the road is going to be too tough. I promise.
Yeah,
because there were at least 100 times when Doug and I were like, should we end today? I mean, over and over and over. So if anyone thinks it's like all, what we started doing, our first products got completely obliterated. We changed the name of our company. We changed directions. Like, everything was about trying something, listening to the feedback, which was usually you're on the wrong path, and changing course. And changing course enough times that you finally say, wow, this is a new path. And actually, this one feels a little bit better. The same thing's happening right now. I'm doing it again. And the same thing is happening with Lifelines. We've changed course a few times, and we are finally, I think, on a path where I can see the horizon clearly. And I think I know how to get there. Who knows? There are always storms.
Yeah.
But I think I see it. So um, I would say, you're going to need that support, and you're going to need something that you are so passionate about, a mission, a vision that like you can't let go. And I say, I think of it as like a leech. It's a bad analogy, but something that sinks its teeth into you in such a fashion that you're trying to like rip it off of you and it won't let go. And that's what a mission will do for you. And I think Doug and I also, we flitted around it for a while. We danced around it, and then we had a vision, a mission, and it was powerful. It was like, can we go back to the classic toys of our childhood that we love so much? Like, where did they all go? And why are they not around? And why, if they are around, are they so boring, dull, lackluster, and expensive? And can we perhaps reinvent those and inject pizzazz and bring them to people in an accessible fashion? And it was like, I don't know, let's go figure it out. And we visited, there was no internet back then. We visited stores and we said, do you have these type of toys? And they were like, not really. Well, if you did, is there a place for them? And they're like, yeah, I think with people would love classic toys. They're just too expensive. Like, well, what if we made them not expensive? So you keep sort of asking questions and seeing, is this premise we have, is it something that could be valid? And, as you keep digging and finding your way through this forest, like, is there a clear path that emerges? So I think if that happens, and not until it does, can you then perhaps have the courage to say, I don't, I see it, and I don't know I can't sleep if I don't bring this to fruition. Only then, when you have something that you see so clearly and you need to bring to fruition so desperately, do you then say, okay, how am I going to do this? Because if I don't know if I can live in peace the rest of my life.
Right.
And that's what happened twice. Doug and I have been fortunate. It happened with Melissa and Doug, this idea of bringing open-ended play and reinventing classic play. It wasn't that at the beginning, but we got into that after a few years, and that was the thing that really lit us up. And Lifelines too started as something a bit different, but then I had this epiphany one day when I was walking, and I sort of had this premise, and I started to research it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And the more I thought about it, the more jazzed I got, the more I couldn't sleep, the more ideas started coming. And same thing, tried to I tried to quell it. I tried to say, no more companies. You're done with that. This is the last thing you should be doing. And I couldn't. I said, I will not be able to live the rest of my years unless I bring these products to fruition. And that's when I very grudgingly and terrifiedly, I don't know, then said, like, I think I'm going to have to do this again.
Yeah, and I think you're meant to be. I mean, you just have it in your blood, Similar to my son. So he's 9, and everywhere we go, or every time he has imaginative play, it's always being an entrepreneur. So he made a pizza business where he would have me call on his cell phone to like a pretend phone and to order something, and then he would deliver it to me, and he'd always have something for tip. But he thought of every step along the way. Or one time he did, it was kind of like he made a store, I guess, but he would bring his toys from upstairs. He'd set up a table downstairs, and he would put the different things on the table and a jar for money, and he wanted real money from us, his sister, his dad, and me. And he would resell his toys to us temporarily, of course, because he had to have them back by the end of the night, but he kept the money. But he has that entrepreneurial mindset. And so now him and his dad are working on buying a vending machine, like a real life vending machine, to put somewhere at some point. And they're thinking, just in the very early stages of thinking, where should we put one? And, my husband asking him questions like, where would be a good one be, like maybe at a gym or, whatever. And so for Christmas, he got the Melissa and Doug vending machine, and it is just his pride and joy. Like, he loves it, and he's already like pretending it's his big vending machine that he's going to do in real life. And it's just such a great way to to use play to maybe that might be his career. You know, he might be starting the next big company. I don't know. It's exciting to see, but
That is the very purpose of pretend play.
right.
Pretend play is trying out roles in a safe environment to discover who you want to be in real life. And that's why I love pretend play is my favorite category. Like bar none, it's so critical to life, even as you get older, because again, he can test out. Like I feel like his gift, he's a salesperson. You know, he's a seller, and maybe even more than a creator. Like he wants to figure out the unique angle to get people to purchase whatever he's selling. And you should get him to watch QVC and
Okay.
HSN. The way they sell, I found that my best. That taught me how to sell. The way they
Interesting.
can take products, the hosts, and I know them very well now because we go on it quite often for QVC for Lifelines.
Right.
They are magic because they make you want something that you probably don't necessarily even want. It's really intoxicating.
Yeah.
And there are also some amazing stories about the woman who like discovered the mop. I think the name of it is Joy, like good movies
Mm-hmm.
about people who've really become passionate about selling something.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. He'll negotiate. I mean, he like I said, he just kind of has it in his blood. It's fascinating, and you know, he's 9, so in 10 years, I'd love to see where he is and where he ends up, and you know, and beyond. But it is, you know, it's just it's beautiful to see his journey. I read about your journey in your book, and you know how you had it in your blood as a child, also, and you know now look at you, you know, all these years later, and it's I didn't say this earlier when you were talking about it, when you were talking about failure and, you know, and success. But I think, you know, I think a lot of people see where someone is now, but they don't see the blood, sweat, and tears how they got here, you know, and
Well,
all the work that went into it.
it's even more than that.
Yeah.
Every day I wake up terrified. And, you know, I have a word I coined, which is exilified. And it's the combination of two very dichotomous feelings. One is exhilaration and one is terror. And I feel both every day about, and entrepreneurship is the very essence, and parenting are the very essence of being exilified, exhilarated, and terrified. And I think the goal in life is to live life exilified, because if everything is just pure joy and there's no stress to it and no strain, and you're not pushing yourself and you're not reaching into the unknown, which is where all possibility lies, then you're not going to discover anything new. You're just going to be in the comfort of the safe zone and homeostasis. But also, if it's too terrifying, right? If it's literally just a black abyss and there's no sense of excitement about it, then you'll just become too terrified and not even want to go there. So there needs to be an equal measure of you're trying something that you don't know the result of, and that's the you know, the terror of the unknown, and we're wired to fear that. So unfortunately, biologically, we're always going to fear things we don't understand. But you want a modicum of like, I'm kind of excited about where that could lead to. So it doesn't change. I mean, every day my ideas are rejected. In fact, someone once calculated I write this in the book, but my rate of success on my product introductions. And I was only successful 37% of the time, which meant I truly failed, like bombs 63% of the time. So basically, you know, nearly 2/3, yet still built, you know, and sold over 1 billion units of toys. So if someone can fail 2/3 of the time and sell over 1 billion toys, what does that say?
Yeah.
It says,
Wow.
keep failing, because in all reality, and I'm being serious when I say this, the more you fail, if it's not just silly failures, if you're doing what feels intuitively right, yet failing, the more ultimately, if you don't quit, the more you will succeed. And it happened with Lifelines too. Fail, 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 succeed. And then the one success was so much greater than any of the failures that you start to build a company. So the failures can be bad, but if your success is 10 times greater than any of the failures, then who cares about the failures? No one looks at people in their life and says, this is how many times he struck out. This is how many times he missed the basket. This is how many interceptions he had. They say, how many games did he win? How many Super Bowls did he win? How many, whatever, Final Fours did he get to? Right?
Right.
They don't say how many did he not get to.
Right.
So
Wow.
if you think about it, we're only judged on the successes, and no one thinks about the others. So the advice to everyone, and I live it every day, is keep getting out there and trying. Because usually when you feel you are like at your last breath is when you're closest to success.
Wow. That's just, oh, that gets me so excited to like just keep trying, even things I want to do in my life. That's so inspirational and motivational, honestly, for everyone out there, no matter what you're doing. It's not you're starting your own company, but even in, any profession that you're in, or just even as a parent, I think a lot of times parents, with their mental load and all the things that we're trying to balance in just our home life can feel like a failure sometimes. And we feel like we're failing and we're drowning in, our own responsibilities. And just to have
All the
that.
time.
Wow. I love that. Okay. Last question. This is something it's come up often. I think I told you this years ago, back in 2018, I was actually invited by Melissa and Doug. I'm sure, you have a wonderful team, and I don't remember all the people I met, but they invited me to come out there to New York and get to see your showroom. And I remember it really well with just, everything aligned on the walls and in the middle. And it was like my dream come true. And then we got to see the opening of your department in FAO Schwartz back when that first opened. This, the newer version of that store. Again, it was like 28, I think November of 2018. So, I mean, Melissa and Doug has been, near and dear to my heart for many, many years, professionally and also, personally at home. We have so many Melissa and Doug that I will never get rid of, and my kids, 12 and 9, still play with them wholeheartedly at home. So, thank you for all you've done with that. But my question to
Yes.
you is, what has been, or maybe there's more than one, but if one comes to mind, your favorite toy or creation that you've ever dreamt up that has come to life, that that has just been like your passion? I think you said it took 20 years to even get the vending machine from creative inception to where it is now. What has been your favorite creation that you've ever created for Melissa and Doug? Or if you have a favorite toy or something, I think people just would love to hear what that is, because
Can
there's
I
so
name
many.
can I name one for Melissa and Doug and one for Lifelines?
Yes, please.
Because I think my favorite product of all time is for Lifelines, believe it or not.
Okay.
But
Yes.
Melissa and Doug, I'll go back to what I said. It would have to be in pretend play, because I think during my own childhood, which was not the best, I lived in my imagination. And those moments when I could be anything I wanted to be, and I could be confident when I wasn't confident, I could be glib when I wasn't glib, like I literally could see it in my head and be there. I believed I was there. Those were the best moments of my life. So the fact that we could help kids to get there was nothing short of magical. So it had to be pretend play. And then I think, any of those experiences, again, that allowed kids to get into a different role. I loved, we did a lot with like pretend play pets,
Mhm.
where we created all these pet sets where they got the stuffed animal. One of them, the pet is injured, and they're like putting the cone around the neck.
Oh, yeah.
And like I loved that, because for a lot of children, they wanted to have pets and their parents either were allergic, or they were allergic, or they were in the city. And this allowed them to actually think they had a pet. And the stories were so beautiful. We created a Super Smile dentist set, which is one of my favorites. It has a set of teeth, and you're putting braces on the teeth. You're drilling for cavities. And again, you're mimicking a potential career. Some of my most amazing letters have been people who wore our chef costume as a child and then sent me a photo of them becoming a professional chef. Many, many, many of those police costumes, firefighter costumes, chef costumes, doctor role play. Like
Wow.
what could be greater than that, right?
Wow.
So, and then my last favorite product from Melissa and Doug is called our Thirst Quencher dispenser. So I loved, and my kids loved those drink machines. In like we'd go to Chipotle, and they like just wanted to play with the ice and the drinks. And a lot of the products at Melissa and Doug were based on things my kids loved to play with in stores, and people would get angry at them. So we just have to create one at home.
Right.
So we basically created a mini version of that where you push in, it delivers the ice, it delivers the drink, and it's like perfection. The way it works is our team really had to think about it. And it's one of my favorite items. And I think it has like a 4.9 star review on Amazon. It has thousands of reviews. And it's just become one of those, it's a simple item, but it's actually on my desk in my office because it's just like one of my favorite items. And I just absolutely adore it.
I love it. I love that one too. And so much engineering goes into it too. So even
So
children
much.
that want to grow up and be an engineer, there's so much behind how
And look,
that or the vending machine, let's say, works, right? Yeah.
I used to say to my team, you might think you're coming here making some simple wooden toys. Oh, no, 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 no. They
Nope.
are, I mean, our grocery store that had a conveyor belt, like
Nope.
there's a lot of complex mechanics and engineering and tooling inside that wooden housing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And then from Lifelines, what is your favorite product
Yeah.
you've created?
So whenever I create, and again, when I was little, I didn't have the happiest of childhood. So I would go off in my imagination a lot. And when I created, I went into this place that I called sort of the angel singing. It was like this place where I was free from any sort of anxiety or stress. And I just felt like time stopped and I was at one with like humanity and everything in the world. And I later learned through a lot of reading that that's actually called flow state. And it's a term coined by this psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, this Russian psychologist who unfortunately recently passed away, but he's an amazing man and like wrote 3 books that are my favorite books. So I wanted to create an experience for older people, like 9 to 99. So also children, but tweens, where they could get into flow state at whim. And I created this pad that is a guided art meditation. And it comes with the markers that are attached in this really cool way that you can bring it everywhere with you. And my favorite one's called Dot by Letter. And it's basically to get into flow state, you have to focus your attention on a repetitive motion where the challenge is exactly 4% greater than your skill for at least 15 minutes. And that's what this does. And as you start to do it, you literally find that you interrupt the stress response and get into this state of calm and joy. And you are in this blissful flow state. So I carry 1 or 2 with me wherever I go. I'm always doing them. And we found that they have been similarly engaging for many, many people. So I am so thrilled to have that product and allow people to sort of get into that grounding state whenever they want, because they can bring this with them everywhere.
Absolutely. Like you said, tweens, teens, adults. I mean, this is great for moms. I think,
Oh, yeah,
just,
it's great for moms.
yeah. So that I'm going to get one for myself. I'm going to get one for my
Great
12-year-old
for
daughter.
teachers, great for nurses, anyone who's like at lunch is just feeling like, I call it going above the line. They start to feel their anxiety rising and they just want to get back to grounding before they continue on with their day. And all you have to do is just dot away. The Dot by Letter is the one I recommend. We have a lot of different modes, but Dot by Letter is the one that seems to have resonated the most.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Sold. I don't believe the 67%, you just sold me on that in 30 seconds. I mean, I'm like, oh yes, everyone needs this as a mental health therapist.
We already know that one is a hit. The 2/3 Uh, that are the failures already happened.
But no, really, from a mental health perspective, that is just golden. So, Melissa, thank you so much for sharing just your story with us today, and just about everything with Lifelines, Melissa and Doug, and just your own personal stories as a mom. I just know I look up to you so much and respect everything you do, and have loved the companies that you've built, and just have so much respect for you and what you've done. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing with all of us.
Well, I am so excited about your new book. I think it's going to be a seminal book on play. And kudos to you for being a play advocate. It's so critical and it's so important. And I commend everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anyone who doesn't know, Melissa and I have been talking behind the scenes a little bit, and Melissa wrote the most beautiful endorsement blurb from my book. And so you'll be seeing her name, in anywhere where you see my book being sold, you're going to see her and her input on my book too. So again, thank you for that as well. And just so excited to just get in front of as many parents as I can, because I know you and I both value play so much, and just can't wait to have that happen. So thank you for
Well,
being part of it.
entirely true. It's a really beautiful book, and I think everybody can benefit from it. So, best of luck with your new baby.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.